The next speech will start now here with Dr. Dörte Fouquet about the Green Deal. And I shortly introduced Dr. Dörte Fouquet before. She's director for the EREF, the European Renewable Energy Federation, but I'm sure that Dr. Fouquet will make a presentation herself of the what EREF is doing. Please go on, Dr.
Thank you. Thank you, Morten. You're very formal today. So, yeah, I'm Dörte. I work for EREF. I represent EREF in Brussels and since 20 years. And EREF is really the voice of independent power producers, representing the national different associations in this field with very active participation traditionally and as founding members from our Danish friends. So it's Folkecenter, as had been said in the beginning. I am also very sad that I couldn't come back. Wanted to see you all, Jan and everybody, but and Prem, talk to him. But okay, today I was asked to talk a little bit about the Green Deal, and I also hope I can share the PowerPoint. Let me see. Well, that seems to be a bit difficult. I had sent it also before because unfortunately it's not all possible on this thing. But my cloud drive. So maybe I have to do it without.
I'll set it on for you, Dörte.
Okay, okay, that would be good.
Yeah, I think it'll be there now.
Oh, wonderful. That's why I sent it beforehand, because my iPad is not so good here.
No problem.
So, thank you. So the European Green Deal, we can continue. Can I do that now, or? No, that's bad. Prem, can you help me then in flipping? I'm sorry.
Yes. Is it on?
Yeah, it's on, but I need somebody to change the slides. That's bad.
Okay. Then you just say, please change.
Please change.
Yes.
I give first, please change, an overview of the European Green Deal. We all know it, but sometimes it's good to see where we are. So we started from a level of, let's say, a defined 100% greenhouse gas emissions, and we want to come to net zero greenhouse gas, not only CO2. I'm always defending that point. It's often forgotten. It's more than CO2 by 2050. And we have to be down to half it by 2030. And we are already way into 2020. And we are struggling to get targets for 2040. It has still to be confirmed on the European level under the European Green Deal. But at least we have this 2050 vision. Actually, that obligation we already had subscribed to as European Union well before Paris. It was reinforced. So it's not the newest news we have. So can you change the slide? Then on the next slide, well, it just, we have a reduction in fossil fuel consumption even before COVID. And especially strong in some countries. You can read that for yourself. We can continue the slides. But I find that quite interesting. Now, I think it was Peggy who referred first to the new Renewable Energy Directive. And the new directive will kick off formally next year, but we still have the old directive. And the old directive, much better than the new one, had binding member state targets. And under the Green Deal, it's still counted how far we are with the share of renewable energy sources in the EU member states. And again, before the virus crisis, 16 from 28 member states had not reached their national binding targets. And some, such as the Netherlands, former EU member UK, one must say, do not reach their target by far. France is also lagging behind. So that is really a very big problem. And EREF at the moment, to push the Green Deal forward, we are working on letters to the Commission to start infringement procedures against all member states who most probably won't reach their target. And if we don't do it, I don't think anybody will dare doing it. But we also cooperate and try to get other renewable or environmental organizations to come in. And we do have exchange with 2, and that's quite good. So we can continue. That's the same, we can continue. It shows a bit the referencing. So the Green Deal is a complicated thing. It wants to mobilize, and it wants to engage industry to become more sustainable. It wants to have a zero production ambition from emission-wise. It wants to have more biodiversity, bring ecosystems back into balance. And one of the aims, obviously, is to have more renewables in the system. We can continue. And energy efficiency and renewables, these are the key principles under the European Green Deal. We still have this old formula of secure and affordable EU energy supply. I think that's such a poisoned thing to say. They say it since we started liberalization of the energy market, and those who say that were always the incumbent industries, and they have another definition of secure and especially on affordable, because they never really integrated the subsidies, the open and hidden subsidies, to the incumbent sector and to many industry energy related. We can continue. The next slide. So we now have the draft, which was sent by the Commission to the Council and to the European Parliament, of a new European climate law, which should then enshrine the 2050 target, which so far we have not enshrined directly in articles in any legislation. The European Commission also wants to extend the EU emission trading system to other sectors, especially the maritime sector. They want to reduce free allowances allocated to the airlines. And they also cover now traffic and construction. That is one thing. Then, in order to help industry in Europe, which is working on an international level, they, in exchange to paying more CO2 and greenhouse gas obligations, let's say, the European Commission is ready for a so-called carbon border tax, meaning that if you can prove that why paying more in Europe, you are disadvantaged in other countries, that goods from other countries who have not this payment attached to it would at the border pay a certain penalty. This is highly discussed in the industry, and some of the modern and also energy intensive industry are not so happy with that, but that's another subject. It's not for today's debate. And again, there is the review wish of the Energy Taxation Directive, make that more biting in a way. But taxation is a thing where we can only move forward on European level if we have unanimity in the Council, which is a very, very difficult thing. So we can continue. This next slide. So in the Green Deal, we do have a new industrial strategy. As I said, financing, when we have a green financing and sustainable Europe investment plan. We have a new farmer strategy, farm to fork strategy on sustainable food, protecting citizens' health, biodiversity, and again, the circular economy action plan. It's also not a new thing, but it is focusing a little bit more on when we want to be greenhouse gas neutral by 2050, how do we get there also in the waste and in circular management planning. So we can continue. Then we do have some which is very highly disputed, and it will be disputed even more now with all the rescue packages we have and we will still face under COVID-19. But before that, we were also talking about new transition fund that is focusing especially on coal regions in the European Union in order to trigger a faster shutdown of use and of production of coal-related energy, that there can be a transformation fund to be tapped in. And this is also that the European Investment Bank should be turned into a European Climate Bank. We can continue on the next slide. We have not the time to go into everything. This has been touched upon already: interconnectivity of energy systems, better infrastructure, eco-design of product, decarbonizing of the gas sector. That's again another poison pill. The fossil gas sector is lobbying, has always lobbied hard and is continuing to lobby very hard that they are the bridge to go from purely fossil and nuclear fueled industries and societies to renewable and efficiency propelled industries, that you would need the gas sector. And that's something EREF is fighting hard since years. We think the gas sector is in the fossil equation is a false friend. The only thing we might be able to use well is the infrastructure. And we talked about power to X before. EU energy standards at global level, development, the full potential of offshore wind energy. I don't have to talk to Danish people about that more. I only can say EREF is as has been said before, I think we were the first in a workshop many years ago already with the slogan, big and small, we need them all. But I don't go into the offshore wind sector now. I only want to highlight that the German government has, as one of its priorities will have to further trigger the North Sea offshore alliance and the Baltic Sea offshore policies with the adjacent partners and with all the 10 partners in this alliance, including Luxembourg. But I hope that will not be all they do in that field. And at the moment in their package is too little on, as I said before, on citizens and on consumers. We can continue. Sustainable industry, I said that, I think we should continue. And building and renovation, that is something where we as EREF also are looking into at the moment, to use the horrible economic aftermath after this COVID to focus a lot, and I come to that a lot, on green recovery, and naturally renovation and building efficiency will be high should be high on the agenda. Can continue. And then the Green Deal, how it was seen by member states. Still in June 2019, after 4 countries had been opposed 2050 goal for climate neutrality, as even if I said before, it is already an obligation by us from before. Poland remained opposed. Hungary and Czech Republic finally came on board. And Poland is endorsing now the Green Deal, but it depends how much money is in for Poland under the transition fund. So also, if we go under the Green Deal, we think as EREF that the national energy and climate plans under the new Renewable Directive have a need for improvement. They have to go probably back to review many of the plans. So we can continue. Continue. So there is an impact. We have already member states who postponed that delays. For example, when you won an auction, under an auction a project, and you had to build out your farm within 6 months or so. This is now in many member states postponed in order to increase security and in order not to have stranded investments. So financing of renewable energy projects, do we have enough money available for investment is the big question now. And is there a delay of political initiatives now when we hopefully come out of the crisis or balance it better? for the renewable energy sector. We can continue the next slide and another one. So we as EREF, you can read that under @EU Green Recovery, we have sent a joint letter with other renewable energy associations to the usual crowd that the economic recovery funds should focus on those actions and enforce actions under the Green Deal. And EREF requests that the Commission provides an information on national policy development so faster, so that the Commission really screens what are the member states now doing in the next weeks and months to transpose the new directive and the new initiatives. And we can continue. And the Commission, there are internal discussions at the moment on the Green Deal. There is, as has been said in the beginning, there is still, I would say, in the majority, some days ago, still many also more conservative commissioners called for that we cannot give up on our ambition under the Green Deal, just the contrary. On the other hand, we do have companies who are lobbying again, like the automotive sector, that the Commission now should be more lenient, so that to get the economic motors running again, that they shouldn't be so tight on emission standard, for example. There's a very difficult discussion. If we want to discuss with the European Parliament at the moment, you have to invite parliamentarians to webinars. The Parliament is closed, the Commission is closed, they work from home, let's say that. And Belgium is a very hard hit country by Corona, and we will not see, they have now a plan, a structured plan, but with a lot of check and balance, and I'm not sure when the Parliament will be in physical session again this year. So we can continue. For example, from the Conservative parties, there is a lot on, obviously, that they say now first we have to get back in business and so forth. But we also have good initiatives, for example, from the French Member of Parliament, European Alliance for Green Recovery, which is echoing what we all, I suppose, want to do. Can continue. Next slide. So the EC has prepares and has stimulus packages for the economic impact, and this is what we are working on with the European Commission. And the coordinator for many information is the Joint Research Center of the European Union, who tries to channel how the budget will look like on the Green Deal and what we can take out of it per member state. Can continue. So we will have the revised work program of the European Commission at the moment. There is a renewed sustainable finance strategy, which will come for the third quarter of this year. There is the climate target plan, and there is a renovation plan as a component of the stimulus package. So that looks quite okay, and we can continue. The next slide. But we have also some things which are postponed to 2020, like a new forest strategy, and then unfortunately also empowering the consumer for the green transition. And that's really something which is sad, and where we have to lobby that they should not postpone it into next year. On the other hand, we will have Germany, and Germany has been a great supporter of many renewable sites and projects in the past, but this government or this Minister of Energy is a bit slow in the uptake when it comes to citizens and empowerment. And so realistically, unless we push and push, there will be a little bit of, there will be some time lost for us in this year. We can discuss it, and we should continue. Next slide. So the climate pact, including the new climate law, was already originally planned for Q3, but we also have to say we don't know how the voting can be in the Parliament. So that's something which goes on all legislation at the moment. And I can say it cuts two ways. We can maybe use the time to better prepare the parliamentarians on the green issues. and that we will do as EREF, so to train them, if I may take on from the previous speaker. And also, when you look the climate law, how it is designed, it is, they used one new regulation we got from the current legislation, that is the EU governance regulation, which is, it's a regulation that's good because whatever you adopt there will be immediately in entering into force applicable in member states and does not need to be transposed even in national law. It has per se an application. But the government's regulation is handicapped, as the Renewable Energy Directive is handicapped, that both do not have binding national member state targets. And we only have a EU binding target. And so what we are doing now in trying to get a 2050 target via an improved governance regulation is already as if you try to eat tough meat without teeth. And it is just a progression of weakness. And so I'm not so sure how that works out. So I think in future, even with the climate law, there is a lot to be done on national level to force member states to take it as binding. We can continue. We are done with that. So I as my last word, I also want to say, when it comes to citizens or to small projects, and the question, are they system enhancer or system nuisance? I would say the Corona crisis has shown us how important it is to have resilient economies. And a resilient economy, as we can see, is an economy where it's not only about regional energy supply and demand and local energy and supply and demand from sustainable sources, which is very, very important. It's also about from how far you buy into your industry product or your energy product spare parts, so to say, and how far you subcontract. And we've seen that in many, many ways now in the crisis, that the industry is very vulnerable because of that you have hundreds of suppliers for one product, for example. And so I would rather say resilience of a system. I would really say the local, decentralized and small comes first. There has to be a privilege. And the others, the bigger, they can adapt better. They can spare more money or benefit or profit on direct storage and direct balancing. So that's my appeal, not to be pushed away on, as we say in German, at the Katzentisch. And with that, I would thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dörte. It was a pleasure hearing your all your long experience and also your view on what is going on, even though it's a bit screaming. But we do have a question from Rohit to you, and the session should be finished about 5 minutes from now. But if people are not too tired and so on, we are willing to continue. But we know that we have been going on for more than 2 hours now, and well, let's see. But anyhow, first the questions from Rohit.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It's always good to see what's happening on a much bigger scale across Europe. But I do find that sometimes in all these discussions, it gets lost of how this Green Deal and these policies are going to affect or directly affect, let's say, everybody in this room, for example, the small and medium-sized enterprises. I mean, we talk about big countries making big decisions. From your talk, I was also very impressed. You obviously believe that SMEs are the backbone and decentralized production is a key or a good solution. But how is this policy going to affect everybody in this room, if I may ask?
Yeah. Well, to be very fair, apart from the inability of Europe to get new binding targets in the second Renewable Directive, in the recast, and in the efficiency directive and so forth. Apart from that mistake by birth, and that was pressed on the Commission by member states under already 2 years before, 1.5 years before the winter package. So the big package of now existing regulations and directives in energy were put on the pathway to the legislative process. Member states, the majority of member states, especially the Visegrad countries and UK, forced that there shouldn't be any more binding targets for the new round until 2030. That I have said. Apart from that, one has to be fair and say that the package we now have, and it won't be changed with the Green Deal, accepts the first time in European legislation, the citizens and community power as an important kid on the block. That has to be said. So whatever we now get with the Green Deal, unless they would use this and would diminish this power they have just installed, but I don't see that, we can still say Europe gives us all the leeway. We will see what the state aid guidelines, we have no time to touch upon that. The state aid guidelines, what they will look like, we have to get new state aid guidelines. I'm convinced we should use COVID-19 and we should press the governments to accept an EU regulation on state aid. There is a way for that in crises, and that basically we force them to allow that citizens projects get a green light as state aid and do not need a lot of long notification processes, because they are the fast healer of structural crisis. So I don't, in our room, unless they use negatively now to influence away the role we have now enshrined in European legislation, I think there we are fine. The only thing we have to do now, we have to combine all our forces and sometimes push our governments better for our cause.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Dörte. Next question is coming from Anna Kranz.
Hello, hi. Yeah, you mentioned that one of the countries which is blocking the Green Deal is Poland. I'm Polish, so of course I'm quite a little bit interested. What are, Poland, I mean, the majority Poland has in the government, which is the Peace Party, Conservative Party. I imagine they are blocking because I imagine they like coal very much. Mm-hmm. Do they give any arguments? Why do they block it? Why are they opposed? And the second question is, what is the consequence of that blocking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it won't be now that Poland is a little bit the only one who is still fervently or was still fervently blocking before the crisis. We do not need unanimity. So for the climate deal, we need qualified majority in the council. So in a way, Poland would have already lost its race in a way. But Europe does not want that, because the transition funds are important to be a cross-partisan approach, because they are just triggering money. I'm bad with figures. I can send it to you later with pleasure, but they are only triggering some funds, and the member states have to come up with other ideas for more funds. And also they will be channeled in the European structural fund regulations. This is our backbone. So we have the social funds, we have the cohesion funds, we have the agricultural funds, and all these things will now have maybe not a transition element in it. And our fear is also that some countries will now take away to further fund the transition. They might not find new money, but take away from other things, like from social, maybe less from hospitals now at the current situation. But you see what I mean? There could be a very negative exchange. That's why we must continue this debate also in the council, and from that I hope Germany can do it. But the Polish situation is a very difficult one. The Polish regions are much more progressive for renewables because they see work and they see air pollution, as we all do, and the opportunities of renewable industry. But the government is so much linked to your oligopolistic central power supply that it's difficult. We have seen that debate already in the winter package debate. We have this 500 ppm barrier, which means that power stations cannot be part of a capacity market, so trying to secure your overall energy supply, and when they emit more than 550 ppm. On that pathway, Poland was adamant against it. The only thing they agreed in the end was that we have a grandfather clause in our new European law saying those power stations which already participate in a current capacity market or have already been part in an auction can continue to do so. So unfortunately, this 500 ppm is not helping you to get rid of your polluting power stations. And I'm sorry to say that, but there is always hope, and there is a very good initiative, and I will ask Morten at least to give you, or you see my email. We have now a Green Visegrad initiative, which our Czech EREF members are heavily involved in. The Commission is aware of that, where we try to get this positive echoes to the Commission, and not only have Visegrad as a stumble block, but as a European motor for green economy. I'm sorry, that's all I can say.
No, that's fine. Thank you. There is hope.
Yeah, always.
Hope. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Anna. Time is going to close now, but we know from others' experience that 2 hours, 2.5 hours, more or less maximum for webinars. There might be people who are tired now, but if there are somebody who is interesting.
Some have to cook dinner.
Pardon?
Some have to cook dinner.
You have to cook dinner, okay.
No, not immediately, but I just say.
But anyhow, we could take a quarter of an hour and continue if there are any things to also to follow up what has been talked about today, because might some of the speaker who has some question for one and another. So if there are any, please do not hold back. And if not, then I know that we will have the pleasure of having your company again Wednesday morning, Dörte.
Yes.
And we look forward to it. But until now, thank you very much for your participation and your willingness to spend your time on this.
Always a pleasure.
Also to all the other speakers who has been on today. We will continue tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and these guys who are having speeches and presentations, please be ready a quarter of an hour beforehand. So, but anyhow, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Thank you very much for today's opening session. And we wish you a good evening and good night.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you.